Another global fire starting up, a modern day uprising. This is the Urban Sentinel, and let's get into it. Nepal, right now, as of September 10th, Nepal is in the middle of a massive wave of protests, the citizens against the government. And there were several factors leading up to this particular event, which, if you've watched the news, is a large scale, from what they're saying, multiple cities across the country. And if you're not familiar, Nepal sits nestled between India, the northeast section of India, and Tibet to its northeast, basically with China overlapping and a large portion on the top end of it. So it's right in that little central Southeast Asia area. The uprising, as it is right now, seems to have been caused by the government cracking down on social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, basically shutting it all down, denying access to it based upon the government saying that those platforms failed to properly register to them. But the underlying tones are they want to be able to limit and negate criticisms against the government from the people, which is something kind of familiar that we saw going on with China just before COVID. They were having massive waves of protests against the government. They were tweeting, they were posting, they were live streaming, all of these different things. And then COVID happened and the government said, hey, we got to lock you guys down. Now, in this case, the Nepalese people, and it's called the Gen Z protest or the Gen Z movement, because the large demographic are within that age group of their basically late 20s going down to, I'm guessing, their late teens, that 20-year-old group, sub 30 area. They're the ones that are out there protesting. And if you watch some of the videos and some of the clips, they're not just simply holding up signs and chanting and singing songs. They're burning down government buildings. They're physically chasing government officials into the streets, beating them, harassing them, tossing them around, chasing them into the rivers. They've pretty much pushed out the government. The president has actually fled, and currently the military was involved initially by the government's request to put in a curfew. And I'm just going to read through some of the things that it's got going on. So the ban was a final spark for a youth-led movement known as the Gen Z protests. The government cited a failure of the platforms to register, but protesters saw it as an attack of freedom of expression. The contributing factors were the widespread corruption and nepotism within the political system for decades, and a failure seen by the people and the ruling elite as seen out of touch with what was going on. Combine that with the economic stagnation that they've been having, their high unemployment, and specifically a high youth unemployment, and the lack of opportunities for many of them within their country to basically earn a living. So a lot of them have to leave the country to seek work elsewhere. But unfortunately, through the system that it's set up, is a lot of the money they make still comes back to Nepal, still comes back to the corrupt government, and still continues to not benefit the people. And the disillusionment that they were facing through the social media and the videos were exposing all of the different things the government was doing. Everything from, graft and bribes to just excessively lavish lifestyles. And we know how that is when you have public servants that make a stated amount of money. You can see it on public record, but yet their net worth is millions and millions of dollars, and they have multiple houses across multiple states and everything else. And the math just doesn't math that no matter how long they've been in office, there's no way that based upon that paycheck, they could have accumulated all of that wealth in that time period in any way, shape, or form. So you have a total distrust and loss of trust of the political system and the political class, and that kind of put things onto a little teeter-totter, as it were. Nepal by itself, I guess back in 2008, I was unaware of this, they officially ended the monarchy. So they just in 2008 got rid of the monarchy. And from that point forward, they've gone through 14 governments since then. So they've had a high turnover without any stable, real form of leadership. Now, the ban that was on TikTok was lifted, or I should say it was eased up, based upon what they're guessing is influence from China, because again, if you're unaware, China owns TikTok. Even though it was a private designed app, China as a state government controls those businesses. So China controls TikTok, and it's been shown that China controls the algorithm's key points, the data information that the algorithms look at to present information to you. So if you want to present information to a group of viewers that encourages them to question their leadership, to point out the waste and the gluttony and the excessive spending by their politicians, you start feeding through the algorithm that type of information. And then people think, oh, it's just natural, it comes up. No, it's put there. Yes, the things that you search for and the videos you watch do play into that, but you can feed into the system information to go out to certain viewers. They can look at those demographics and say, click, 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 and then you get this type of information. This way, you build up a large force of people that are all starting to share the same information. Did you see this? Did you see this? And it starts to spread. Now, granted, there were already underlying tones of distrust and disenchantment to begin with, just saying that that could have sped things along. And we've got a person named KP Sharma, or KP Sharma Ali. It was the recently resigned prime minister, and he was the one that initially set off the whole banning of the social media, which triggered the protests. Then there's a man named Balan Shah, who's not only the mayor of Kathmandu, but he's also a popular rapper, and he's been expressing protests or expressing support for the protesters in different messages, but he's not officially part of the movement. But it would be a good play if you want to go from mayor to president, just saying. And then even the former king, as I said before, they just ended the monarchy. The former king, Gyanendra Shah, issued a rare statement acknowledging the protesters' demands and calling for calm, highlighting his continued symbolic influence. So you've got a person that was the king, the last monarch, the last ruler, stating that I hear the people and the people are right, and we should, calm down and look at this thing. So again, it's a matter of the perspective from within and what you see going on. A lot of things as far as the rest of the global response, as you can expect, is a bit keyed up because there's a lot going on everywhere else in the world. And like I said before, there's another fire in the global wildfire that's going on. So the prime minister had resigned and basically physically fled the country. The army has still been deployed to try to enforce order and try to get negotiations going with the protesters to see what they can do to pretty much end this. The UN human rights chief has already expressed deep concern over the violence called for it because there was a disproportionate use of force, that's something to remember, against the protesters, and they were urging dialogue. And the UN Secretary General also called for restraint. Now, during this protest, I guess there were 19 deaths and hundreds of injuries when the government tried to crack down on them. So right off the top, similar to Tiananmen Square with China when they had those protests, they start off strong and, splitting skulls open, and then they go, oops, things are getting out of hand because people start fighting back. So with that, the reaction from India has been, they've issued travel advisories because they're neighbors about people going in, and it's nationals that are there. Hey, maybe you want to try coming back home for a little while, just in case things go bad. China hasn't made any official response directly, but as we know, there's an opportunity there, and if China sees it, they're going to take it. Now, as far as from this point forward, again, the protests are still going on. There currently isn't actually even an acknowledged negotiating team with the protesters as far as leadership. It's, from what it's been described, they are a loose affiliation. There's no centralized core. There's not a president and, a VP. There's nothing. It's just a whole entire group, millions of people, all pissed off about the same thing all at once. But looking at it this way, they're estimating that it's a political hotbed right now. If this goes on from 1 to 4 weeks, basically over the next month, and there's no real definitive end to it, one, it's going to completely destabilize the entire government because it won't be functioning. Two, it's going to leave a vacuum where either the military now has to declare basically total martial law and take over, and in which case you still don't know where the military stands. Right now, the military was enforcing the original government's rules with the curfew, and they're currently trying to just maintain order without direction of the government. Now, if they become the ones in charge, things can go in an entirely different direction. If it goes longer than a month, estimating anywhere from 1 to 3 months possibly, you're going to look at a complete lack or a complete vacuum of total authority, which may end up leading to the smaller towns and the provinces and things like that basically maintaining their own individual sovereignty. So Nepal, yes, as a country still exists, it's still there on the map, but as a functioning unified government, it won't. It'll basically come down to you connect to the provincial leaders in those areas that you need to have communication with, and they set the terms, they set the standards, in which case that, again, leaves it open to if someone's interested in taking over a new country, it's ripe for the picking in a situation like that. Now, as far as the economic disruptions, those are all going to be individual ripple effects. I cannot say definitively that Nepal's contribution to the global economy won't have any effect. I didn't go into that level of depth, but no matter what, even at the very minimum, trade routes and in some cases, businesses, companies that are foreign companies to Nepal that are there may have to shut down and relocate, which can slow up their operations. Even something as simple as a call center, which none of us would be sad to see go, but even something as simple as that can displace hundreds of people and delay and change an entire operation in just a few seconds, and it may shut everything down or backlog things weeks to months, depending upon what it is. If there's no direct resolution and it ends up being one of those UN situations, again, that's another scenario where now foreign entities have to get involved into another country at minimum to contain and control it. And again, India is looking out for its interests because they are their physical neighbors right there. There's nothing really being said currently from the other nearby countries. I mean, you've got Bangladesh over there, you've got Tibet just above it, but China's the other major player, and then Pakistan off to the side. So within the purview of that area, you've got those three players that would have the greatest interest in how things go with the government in terms of its control or lack of control. And it'll be something that I'd say definitely we need to keep an eye on. Nothing that we can do here, but definitely keep an eye on it to see how it goes, because if you remember during the Arab Spring period where you had one country would have a set of protests and then another Arab country would have another set of protests and then another one, it's sort of a domino effect where the entire region at one point was pretty much on fire with people protesting, trying to overthrow the government and destabilize the leadership status as it was. This could be another situation where that can happen, and it may not necessarily be neighboring country to neighboring country, but within that region, their dissatisfaction with the leadership is going to be something that people anywhere, you, I, and any other country can understand, and that may then present an opportunity for others to look at what they're doing and saying they took direct action and they got it done. That may be the next thing, because this is the first time since Gaddafi that I think I've seen an entire population directly target the leadership to go directly after him. Now, you can think back to Saddam, but his country was already under control. He was just hiding out, versus Gaddafi was pretty much active in his country, and they said, hey, we're going to kill you. And then that was it. It was done. So again, it's just a little update, something to keep your eye on. You're watching TV, scrolling on your phone, listening on the radio, because I think if this continues to burn out of control the way it is currently, it's going to get bigger and it's going to end up spreading. Anyway, that's it for this one. Check out these next videos and I'll catch you in the next one.